Good afternoon, how are you?
Good afternoon, I'm good, What about you?
Oh yeah, boy, up since 5 o'clock.
I thought you were up and about earlier today.
On a mission, jeez, I tell you what, crunching numbers. Well, I tell you what, for anybody watching, this is the reason I do this, I get up at 5 o'clock, because it gives you a huge amount of time without any interruption with anybody disturbing you, because everybody else is basically sleeping or getting ready for their work. So, you know, kind of when you wake up at that sort of time, it's a golden opportunity to be uninterrupted and just batter on with what you're doing. So this morning, I've been getting a lot of stuff out the way, but I've also been working on forecasting. To make sure if anything happens. So you know, I've done it in the past, Richard. I've put in my numbers and I've changed it. If interest rates go up, if occupancy rates drops, if anything like that changes, then you know we'll work out for there exactly where we are and what we're doing. So that's what I'm working on right now. Basically, got sheets and sheets of information, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, I'm trying to work out if I should pay off some of the mortgages I have. Because they're getting higher interest rates and they're in our name. And this is to do with the interest rate, interest rate deduction at lower rate only. And it's not deductible against you as an individual now, but it is as a limited company against your income. But it's not as an individual, it's only against your tax bill at the end. So it's a completely different proposition in terms of how the tax works between a limited company and also an individual. So this is what I'm trying to work out.
So is that something that just applies to your individual circumstances, or is that something you would advise other people to look at?
That's everybody. Everybody's got a property renting in their name or their partner's name, and not a limited company, who has a mortgage on it, needs to review that situation to make sure the implications if it pushes them into a higher rate banding, therefore they could end up paying more tax than they expect, because the interest is only deductible at the lower rate allowance.
Right.
A classic example of that is, say you're borderline tax, so you're just under the higher rate threshold. Okay, so you're just under the higher rate threshold, and what happens is interest rates go up just a slight amount, so the interest amount goes up as well, but then you have to earn more money to actually cover that interest cost potentially. So if you earn more money before the interest is taken off, that means it'll push into a higher rate band.
Right.
And then you'll get taxed on that money you earn more, because your interest rate's gone up, remember. You get taxed on that money more, and therefore you'll only get 20% taken off. So the marginal difference will be the difference between the higher rate and the lower rate. You'll be paying extra on that amount of money that you're earning over and above.
Right, okay.
It's a marginal rate you'll pay because of that. A limited company and mortgage interest, it has no effect at all. You're allowed to deduct it completely against your income and off your income and expenditure as well, your profit and loss. So it doesn't affect things at all. It's just as an individual. So it's something you should always, if you're on that borderline a higher rate, or even if you're a high rate payer, and you have got buy-to-lets in your name with an interest, with a mortgage, then you should check that how it's going to affect you, because you will pay more money as the interest rate goes up. So it's all these things. But then if I pay the interest off, then I'm actually earning more money. Therefore, that'll push us into a higher rate again. Therefore, the smaller amount of interest I'm taking off will actually mean that I could end up paying more. I'm not really sure. That's what I'm trying to work out. That's why I'm trying to work out right now and see where I stand with that. Like my grand piano.
I do. But like you say, it's good to get that extra time and use it and utilize it to kind of work those things out. You mentioned about limited companies there, and obviously the difference if your property's in a limited company. This Thursday, our private Zoom is about limited companies and all the way the whole process through that and accounts and things. So if you're one of our landlords and investors, you should have got my invite last week. I'll be resending that this week prior to Thursday. Please join if you want some tips on limited companies and how that all works, and the whole process right through to the submitting accounts and things. Okay.
I know you say usually please join, and it's like I'm not really
Join.
I'm not really pleasing anybody. You join and you get all the information from somebody that's done this already and understands it completely as an accountant, or you don't join at all and you go pay somebody else to actually give you that information as well.
Yeah.
Same information. If not, they're probably not a property investor, so they won't understand it from a property investor's point of view. So therefore, you're getting access to somebody that's got a complete track record in this and also has an experience of being an accountant and understanding the numbers and the dynamics and that. So what we're going to be talking about on Thursday in the private Zoom session, and again, all the details are in there to contact Richard if you've not been invited to that private Zoom session. We're going to be talking about, I've been asked already, how I mean, I think it's really easy to set up a limited company. And I'm saying, well, you just go on the internet and you just buy a company off it. And I now understand, I remember what it was like for me in the beginning. It was quite difficult for me in the beginning to understand. It's like, what if I do something wrong and I set the wrong things up and I can't change it, and it ties me into something. And it was more fear than anything, because
I was just going to say the fear of doing it wrong, like we spoke about last week.
It's the fear of doing it wrong, but not understanding the process. So what I'm going to talk about is we're going to talk about how you set up a limited company in the very beginning, how to do that online. It's quite straightforward. So right from the very beginning, and then also the next steps you have to do, like open the bank account and then, you know, register it and all the rest of that palaver. It comes in between. And then it's a golden opportunity for people to ask in that Zoom session their own personal questions about their circumstances and how it helped them in their portfolio, and to get them started as well. Okay, Facebook user. Hopefully there's a link in there that says you've got
to click
to give permission to StreamYard to show your name.
Show your identity.
I'm not sure who Facebook user is, but it's brilliant. You've got a list of questions ready.
I'm sure it was somebody we know that you've got your list of questions ready for us.
Angela, and good afternoon, Roy. Roy's a great advocate of property investment.
Yeah, afternoon, Roy. Afternoon, Angela.
In the news. What's in the news then, Richard? So far, what have you learned so far in the last week?
For me, in the news, I found a really interesting article last week. It was about, obviously, the losses of not being insured or not having your buy-to-let insured. There were some interesting stats on it, and insurers have been warning, obviously, of the scale of losses that tenants' damage could have an effect on landlords if they're not insured. Now, there was a lot of figures pulled for that for Hamilton Fraser Insurers, which I know is somebody that you recommend, Jim. And amazingly, although there's 85% of buy-to-let landlords are insured, I just found it astounding that there's 15% of them are not, and they opt not to be through choice. And I think that's, I mean, Jim, you'll know, obviously, I don't expect you've made any great claims on your insurance, but still the importance of having that in place. I think that landlords don't realise they run the risk of losing up to 45% of their annual income in the event that something does happen.
This takes me back to my corporate days when I was in manufacturing. I remember the managing director pulling me aside and saying, look, you know, we need to make sure you're the company secretary, so we need to make sure that we're covered for every risk possible, and we'll always minimise the downside if anything happens. And I'm like, why would we need to do that? Now, this was really the early days when I first started out, but then I began to see over time, you know, you can completely expose yourself if anything happens to everything. You could lose everything, basically. Could you imagine if a building burns down and you're not even covered, or you've not even got the proper cover? Because some people actually think normal residential insurance covers them, when in actual fact you've got to get proper buy-to-let insurance. And if you don't have that, and your property does burn down to the ground, your rebuild cost, I mean, maybe you only bought the property for 70 grand, but the rebuild cost could end up being about 170 or even 200,000, because you've got to clear the site, and it's maybe part of another block of flats, and you've got to clear these flats as well, because you maybe got the downstairs one. So then therefore their insurance should cover, and then they have to work it all out, but you have to be adequately covered, or you've had it. Now, could you imagine if you lose that, and then you have to pay the liability for that, and somebody else is affected because of it, and then they end up taking you and suing you or taking you to court because you don't have any cover at all, and you're personally liable for that. So it's 150 quid for the year. It's like, why on earth would you not pay that? It's crazy. Even to cover yourself, like what I do, is for £1,000 excess, and that's why I do it. I only cover myself in the event of burning down the property. That's effectively it. Or Worst case scenario is that one I've got, the
one
roof,
with the roof, yeah.
refusing to fix it. I mean, that's been empty. I was getting paid rent for 4 years for that.
It's been a while, yeah.
And they were helping me pursue them legally as well, and all that for just, you know, a few £100 to cover liability. Could you imagine what it'd be like if I didn't have any insurance cover at all? I'd be sitting here still out of pocket, effectively. What? That's about £5 a year in rent. So 4 years, 5 years, £5 rent, 5 years, 25 grand in rent. Yeah. So I'd have lost 25,000 in rent, plus the fact I'd still be where I am. And then I'd have the repairs, which is inside, which I've been paid for. They paid me for that. I'm not doing it now until it's fixed, until the upstairs person does it. But then you're talking about £16,000 worth of repairs, because the joists and the ceiling and everything above me are actually completely rotten. They're all going to be ripped out, and that's the person's floor upstairs as well, who's actually been causing the problem. So I've got all that money tucked aside from the insurance company to do that. So that's covered me to the tune of about 40 grand. And I paid a couple of £100 for that policy. I mean, geez, it is definitely, if you're trying to risk it by not insuring yourself, you're absolutely crazy. I've got a big portfolio, and it costs, you know, I think it's about £6,000 or £7,000 a year in insurance costs. But look at what I just got there, and look at the cover I've got, and look at the possibility of anything happening. So that's what I would recommend to everybody. Make sure you've got the right cover, and you've got access to that information anyway, Richard.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if anybody feels like they've maybe not got the right cover, or they're being maybe charged too much, then definitely come to us. We've got obviously connections through Alan Boswell Group, Hamilton Fraser Insurers as well. And like you say, Jim, the average annual cost to a landlord to insure a property is around about 1.5% of the annual income or something. So in the grand scheme of things, I mean, definitely always have proper landlord's insurance in place. Rental properties, any rental property is likely to succumb to some level of damage in its lifetime. So always be prepared for that and have proper insurance.
I think so. Because remember, you've got somebody in there, you have no idea what they're going to do. The classics in the past that have happened to me was an electrical fire, where the actual fridge freezer went on fire. Yep. And, you know, it was about £20,000, and then there was rent on top of that. Another one was a chip pan fire. The wee girl got up in the middle of the night. They were using a chip pan, and she went and turned the cooker on by mistake during the night, messing about. And lo and behold, another £19,000 worth of damage as well. Smoke damage all the way through, and then the kitchen was destroyed as well as a result. So that's a disaster case scenario that I've always covered myself for, and the only liability I had was the £1,000 excess, and everything else was paid. So that's why I'd say to everybody, well, when you total it up, when you total up what I've been paid, like 40, 20, 20, so about 80, and then I've got, I mean, overall on average about £5,000 a year for my insurance. Then you're talking about what, 80 divided by that? That's 16 years. So that's 16 years. I've been doing this for 30 years. So when you think about it, I've actually got my money, my stuff paid for me with no risk at all, and I've really just paid half my premiums because I've got half of them back in the insurance claims.
Yeah, definitely.
Again, that comes down to opportunity cost and opportunity loss. You know, that's the ultimate thing that can happen.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like you say, to weigh your options up at the beginning. And if you are doing that and feel like maybe you need to look around, and it's always good to look around at different insurers and compare things, then we are able to put you in contact with people to do that.
Absolutely. Let's talk numbers.
Let's talk numbers then.
Yeah. So when I first started out, this is what everybody wants to hear. How the hell did you do
it? Tell us how you done it, Jim.
How did you start? I tell you what I did in the beginning. In the beginning, I tested the market in the beginning. I was doing my stuff today, my spreadsheets and that, and I was looking back and I was thinking to myself, I remember in the past where we had to actually, we used to get phone calls from the neighbours. This is how bad till it was when I first started. We used to get phone calls from the neighbours saying your tenant's dismantling your kitchen and putting it into the back of a van, literally to sell it off to someone else. That's how difficult it was when we first started, because there was no real regulation and there was no real screening of tenants or anything like that in the beginning. So I had to learn and think on my feet as I went. But literally, that's what it was like. It was like the Wild West when we first started. I mean, I was compliant with everything possible, and I was Fife Council's first charter mark landlord. I was way before landlord registration, way before anything approval. I was Fife Council's first charter mark landlord, which meant Fife Council endorsed me as a landlord, and also we were their first letting agents as well. We were endorsed by Fife Council way before Letwell, which is the government approved process now. But that was as a product of learning as we go and understanding how we went and having to learn so much. So I became a complete student in the beginning when I first started of the buy-to-let business. It wasn't that at the time, obviously, but that's what I would be doing now. I'd be a complete student. I'd be learning off that now. When I say learning off the right people, I mean the people that have actually done it before. I saw something the other day, and actually the guy said, I can't remember who he was, Stephen somebody, and he was talking about, he says, property millionaires are actually, a property millionaire is kosher because more than likely they've made it and they want to give back to other people to invest in property, and they usually find that they actually do things for free. Whereas, and they've built it because they've built their portfolio and they've benefited as a result, so that it's easy for them to give that education for free as a result of that. Whereas the people that genuinely haven't made it in property investment have actually sold training courses. Dare I say, I might be challenging some people out there. They've actually sold training courses, and it's the sold training courses that have actually given them the money to invest in property. If that makes sense, one is the one way and one's the other way. I mean, I came up and built a portfolio and then started teaching people. I never taught people, made money, and then built a portfolio with that money. So I made money in my day-to-day job, and then I invested that in property all the time in a kind of similar way. But I was actually, if that makes sense, I was eating my own cooking.
Yeah, because you were still working and earning in a 9 to 5 job, or say 9 to 5,
Absolutely.
more hours than that.
You need to become a student. You need to become a student. You need to learn off the right people, and it's actually asking for advice on people like myself and saying, who would you speak to, or who would you plug into, or what books would you read? And that's what we talk about in the private Zoom sessions. About the books you should be reading, about the people you should be learning from, about the people you should be watching from. Because sometimes I won't say it in a public forum because there's ones out there that get a wee bit antsy, and it's like, oh, I'll take a court order over you, and it's like, fill your boots, because I tell you what, I'll fight you to the death for the hell. And the money doesn't mean anything to me, really. It's a tool to do with what you want to do and give you the freedom, and that's all I ever did. So I built what I call a property time machine, if that makes sense. And effectively, I'm a property time lord. But I didn't do it for the money. I did it for the time and the freedom. I did it because the money would set me free. And I mean, I was in industry, and I was, dare I say, I had a good job. But what I've learned is good is the enemy of great. And what I mean by that, it's like you're told consistently, get yourself a good job, knuckle down, be really good at what you do. And it's always good, but it's never what do you really want to do and how could you monetize it? It doesn't go like that. I maybe talked to you the other day about this. There was a guy, he was earning, at 10 years old, he was earning $1,000 a month at 10 years old, going door to door. By the way, if your parents out there, you're not going to like what I'm about to say next. You might agree with me, but it's going to be controversial about education. So he's making $1,000 a month, and he was doing really well, and he was only spending a couple of hours a week for doing it. And then he thought to himself, I'm going to scale this up a bit, and I'm going to put more effort into it. So he put more effort into it, and he worked every week, and he ended up making like $3,000 a month. And fair enough, he was compromising a bit with his schoolwork and stuff like that, but he was making $3,000 a month. At that time, his mother and father weren't even making anything near that, and he was making it in his part-time while he was going to school, around about between 10 and 15-year-old. And do you know, his mother and father hauled him aside one day and said, why are you failing in maths? Hello, I'm making more money than you. It's like, but that is how we are. That's why I say good is the enemy of great, because people talk about getting a good job, but you should be telling people to be great at what they do. And it's the old thing about, a fish can swim well, but if you judge it on its ability to climb a tree, it'll go about thinking it's an idiot for the rest of its life. We all have skills in everything what we do and how we do it. And we're very skilled at each individual thing. So what you do is you find out what you absolutely excel in, and you be the best in it. You be world class in it, and then you monetize it. That's what you do, because everybody will pay far more for your skill than they will for another person, because you're the one that's outstanding in it. This comes back to the Olympic athletes thing, how they surround themselves with a team, a power team. And everybody goes, God, they're paying millions. They're getting sponsorship deals for millions and millions of pounds for doing what they do, and it's just running. At the end of the day, it's just running.
But they've mastered it.
We're just running into a line here. It's like, what's all that about? But get huge endorsements from everybody because they can sell things and they get all these endorsements. So they have these power teams and they spend millions of pounds, and these people helping them to be the best they can be and continue to be the best they can be. But at that level, they're not trying to shave 1 second off their time. They're trying to shave 0.0001 second off their time every single time with the power team. They're spending millions every year to keep them in that zone. Think about that. When they get to that elite level, they're still investing all that money to make sure they can just maintain what they've got, but also just do these wee tiny marginal gains. And that's effectively when I first started, how I thought. It was just these wee marginal improvements I thought to myself I would do and how I would do it. And that mindset that you would get as a result of what you were doing. And that all came back to reading the right books. Albert Einstein, I think, actually said it. He was a patent clerk in an office, but look what he did. But he actually said it. You will be in the next 5 years by the books you read and the people you associate with. And it's also true.
Yeah. I was just going to say that we teach that, or we talk about that in the private Zooms. It's about the circle of people that you surround yourself with. It's about who you learn from and how and who you absorb that knowledge from, and find the right sources to do that.
It is, and as I said, be great at something. Find what you're really good, what you're great at, not what you're just no bother at. It's the jack of all trades, but master of none. Whereas I say jack of all trades and master of them all. But that's a mindset thing. I mean, people think you're an arrogant, whatever it is you want to call me. You're an arrogant so-and-so and all the rest of it. But you have to have that mindset. If you don't have that mindset, you're doomed from the very beginning. And that's the mindset you have to adopt. So it might take a few years for you to condition and break free and break free of these chains you have and that bondage you have round about you that's been socially conditioned into you. But that's what you have to do. And I spent a good 2 or 3 years before I even started property actually doing that. I was fortunate enough to be involved in network marketing. But alongside network marketing was a huge business organization called International Business Systems, who actually had books, tapes, functions, and mentors. And I went to every single one of them, the 4 wheels on my car. It was no good no going to one of them because you've got 3 wheels, a car will never go. But I had that 4 wheels on my car, the books, tapes, the functions, and the upline, the mentor itself. And I learned from these people, and they taught me how to be successful at what they did. But they said all these skills that you've got here are transferable. They can go into anything, and they did. And I accelerated my career within that period of time when I started as a trainee accountant. Within, I think it was something like about 10 years, from a training accountant to a financial director in 10 years, from a standard start. Probably homeless and unemployed, I think that is 10 years, to a financial director in industry. And then finally, retired after that at 38-year-old. But it's these skills that are transferable into everything else. So what you learn right now is maybe pertainable to property investment, but all the mindset stuff is pertainable to everything else outside of what you do. So even with a property investment, you're still getting all that knowledge and expertise and everything else you do. And everybody starts to notice that, and you become the laws of attraction, and your boss then goes, you're absolutely outstanding at what you do. You're showing initiative and everything. You're doing this and you're doing that. I could see this and I'm going to promote you. And that's effectively what happened to me all the time. I'm just used to loads and loads of work. Give me more work. Just like I never used to sit there and coast it. And at one point in time, I remember when I joined Standard Life. When I joined Standard Life in George Street, actually some of the guys took me aside one day and goes, Jim, go and slow down a bit.
I can believe that, Jim.
I was like, what?
That doesn't surprise me.
And genuinely, honestly, they said to me, there was a group of them actually, it's going slow down a bit, because genuinely, you're actually making us look bad, because you are motoring through what we take a week to do in a couple of days. And it says it's like it's no great, but for me, I was just like, this is just what I do and how I am and how efficient I am and how I'm doing it. So I just continued to do it. I mean, they were all right with it, but you were kind of tongue in cheek about it in the beginning, but they were getting a wee bit annoyed at the fact that I was effectively showing them up. But the boss was absolutely overwhelmed. Like, he was over the moon, because what happened was the rising tide lifts all ships. Everybody else started to go faster and be more efficient at what they're doing. And they started to ask me, what do you do and how do you do that? And make it all quicker as well. So it wasn't skills that I learned in standard life. It was skills I learned in what I was doing, and the mentality and the mindset and the books I was reading and the mentors I was and the functions I was attending as well. And I mean things like you didn't have online at the time. You had to physically go to the Caird Hall and sit with 2,000 other people and watch on the stage from other speakers that were more successful in this business entity than you were, and they would tell you how they did it. And that's exactly what I did. And we were paying 20 quid for a ticket for that. And folk were going, oh, I can't afford 20 quid. And I'm like, if you can't afford 20 quid at this point in time, this is why you need to go to this function. To learn how you can afford 20 quid, because that's dire at that point in time. If you and effectively, that's what I say to people now. If you're sitting watching this and think, I could never afford to do this, I could never afford to do that, I could never, and it's like we've got a crisis on our hands and all the prices are going up. It's like you have got all the things at your fingertips right now, all the knowledge at your fingertips right now. I can guarantee you that, but you just don't know it. And I'll give you a wee analogy here. How do you train a flea? Now, a flea can jump 36 inches. Think about that. 3 feet, a flea jumps. Okay? Now, you put a flea in a glass jar, and you put the lid on the jar, and the flea begins to jump. They're 36 inches. But it hits the lid all the time, and it gets blooming sore at some point in time. So what the flea does is it conditions itself to only jump the 5 inches to the top of the glass, and actually misses the lid. Okay? So it doesn't hurt itself anymore. And it continues through its whole life, just jumping 5 inches, even though it can jump 36. Think about that potential. It doesn't acknowledge anymore. I can only jump 5 inches. Mummy flea comes along, they have a baby flea. Mummy flea and daddy flea are now jumping 5 inches, even though they can jump 36. Baby's born, baby can jump 36 inches. But how high do you think baby learns to jump? Only 5.
Yeah.
Because he sees his mum and dad doing it. And isn't that just like society today? What we do is teach you to take that glass lid off and jump out of that box, basically.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing here. We're teaching you to jump out take that glass lid off and jump out that box and learn, because you have that potential to do it. Everybody has it. Anybody watching, I defy you to prove me wrong, because I can prove you right every single time. You have the capability of being as greatly successful as anybody else around you. That's what it comes down to. But because we all jump at 5 inches and people around us jump at 5 inches, we don't realize that we can jump a lot more than we have. That's why you've maybe been told all your life, geez, it's got potential. She's got potential, eh? And it was always in your report card, got potential, but then how did it turn out like it was?
Yeah.
And that was effectively what it was like for me, conditioned socially by all the surroundings around about me. So it took me a couple of years. So if you're getting started in property investment, don't worry about watching everybody else going, oh, I'm buying a house and I'm knocking down walls and all the rest of it. It's like, forget that rubbish. It's like, great, grass is always greener. You don't know what they're going through, and they could be swimming naked while the tide's in. Wait till the tide goes out. Wait till the tide goes out, and I really mean it. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. Want to make sure that everything's okay if the tide does go out. This is all about risk minimization. Okay, so that's how I was, and that's what I would do today. I would learn, if I was starting in property investment, I would attend their workshop. Hey, it's free. We're not going to ask you to pay anything later on. There's no point in that, but that's not what we're doing here. This is genuinely, there's no upsell here. I'm not wanting you on any course or anything like that. I just want to give you more knowledge, more information, more advice, and help you on your journey. At some point in time, you might be so successful, and you might reciprocate that for me. If you don't, it makes no difference to me. I'll still sit on a beach for the rest of my life and drink pina coladas. That's the reality. So that's what I'll be doing right now. If I was starting out for the first time, I would also, the one thing, and I couldn't find it before. The one thing I'd be doing right now, and this is what I did in the very beginning. I'll just share the screen, and I'll see if I can get it all on the screen for you. Let me share this. I wrote this down on a bit of paper because I don't think I had a spreadsheet at the time. So if you can see that, Richard, you see that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I wrote year and year. Okay, yeah, year. And 1, 2, 3, 4, and you know the rest. Let me just compound that up. See, it doesn't do it like that. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so this was me and purchase. So this was me when I first started out. Now, I tell you what, how did I get the money in the beginning? In the beginning, I actually had policies. So I had policies, endowment policies. Now, they had been attached to properties that were bought in the past, but because we were on capital repayment now, we didn't actually need an endowment anymore because it was interest-only mortgages at that time, and you had to take out endowments at that time. That was savings schemes. You know, they'll compound up over 20 years or something, and they'll be worth something a wee bit more at the end of 20 years. So that's what an endowment was. So I had a savings scheme, and I think at that time, you know, they weren't attached to any properties anymore because, as I say, we were on capital repayment. So I think they were about £4,000. But the great thing is, property at that time was about 15 grand to buy. So I had a savings of £4,000. So what I did was I just went around loads of bank managers. There you go. It's just knocking on doors. Loads and loads of no's. I mean, I must have had well over 100 no's from the banks. But I consistently asked the same banks every single time when the managers changed if they would, you know, would you give me funding for this? Would you give me funding for that? And just to see if I can push them. And I still go back to the Bank of Scotland now and actually say, if I gave you this, would you give me 100% funding on that? Because you've got security against this, and the numbers still make sense, and I'm still covered. So if I give you 100% funding, I gave you that as, you know, as security, like the equity in a property. But actually not realizing and not paying it off against it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So in other words, if I've got 100,000, well, I did that with my Cooper office. I bought my Cooper office for 100,000, but I actually said to them, I've got equity and everything else, and effectively when I give you that equity and give you a guarantee on that property, that other property I've got, it's got the equity in it, that could give you about 40,000 towards that. So effectively, if you then sold off that property, it's guaranteed against this 100,000 lending against 100% on my Cooper office at that time. Then you've got 60% loan to value. Make sense?
Yeah, I bet that was something I was going to ask you. It's actually doing here because I was thinking, I knew what you were going to talk about your journey today, and it's like, so where did you get the money to start with? How did you start off? Because a lot of people do come to me and say, like, obviously they're interested in building a portfolio, but maybe they've not got equity in their house and they've only got a couple of grand in savings, and they think like, I'm not really in a position to start. And you say obviously going about and asking the banks and things back when you started. Is that something that you would still recommend to do now?
Yep. Elaine got offered redundancy. She got offered redundancy from Diageo at the time, and we had just bought one property. Now, I went through a lot of testing at that time. 176 Taylor Street, that's the one. We've still got that today. I still own it after about 30 years. So 176 Taylor Street was £15,000 at that time, and we were renting it for 300. But I did a lot of testing at that point. I actually advertised in the paper. Nowadays, we all know property rents. But at that time, we had no idea property was going to rent and was this going to be viable.
There's a risk factor in it.
Yeah. So what I did was I advertised in the paper at that time in a lineage advert and said, you know, property to rent, Aberhill, 1 bedroom. I think it was 280 every 4 weeks because it was a 4-week cycle at that time. 70 quid a week. So 280, or was it 60? No, it was 60 quid a week, actually. It was 240. That was it. The rent was 240 or something like that, or 260 for the month. No, it's coming back to me. It's all coming back to me now. There's a song there somewhere. So 260 was the rent a month at maximum at that time for a 1-bedroom. So I advertised it for 260. I hadn't bought it yet, and everybody, there was folk phoning up saying, "Oh, I'm interested in that flat," and I went, "Whoa, wait a minute! I know there's a demand for this now." So I then went and bought the flat. But how I got the money for the deposit was it was a 90% deposit at that time. It was a 90% loan to value. So I only needed 10%, which is about £2,000.
Yeah.
So effectively, I managed to scrape together £2,000 to get that, just from money I had. You know, there was a lot of sacrifices I made.
I thought you were going to say money I had lying around.
No, it wasn't it. There was a
No,
huge amount of sacrifices I made.
No.
Listen, I'll tell you this.
This is a different time.
If you think the price for winning is high, wait until you get the bill for regret.
Yeah.
I'll say that again. If you think the price for winning is high, wait until you get the bill for regret. Because I tell you what, it'll be one or the other you'll pay. And if you don't pay if you don't do the price for winning, the bill for regret, and you don't pay that either, your kids are going to pay it, your grandkids are going to pay it, and the generations are going to pay it, and somebody's going to have to pay that bill off. Because that's the reality for today. That's how things work. So I sacrificed a lot in the beginning, Elaine and I. Literally, we wouldn't buy another car. We looked at rent. We looked at leasing a car as least as possible. I used to conserve my cash flow. I used to work on cash flow at the time. So I think we had a loan for a car. We had a loan for my car. We had a mortgage for the house. We had I didn't know, we had something else. So what I did was loan consolidation. So I then took, because it was all about cash flow every month I had, that I would need to have to get that. So I took these loans and pushed them out a bit more and put them all in one loan, consolidated it into an easier payment, a lower payment every month, because I knew the long-term effects of the compounding wealth I would get anyway. So I wasn't bored if it was going to cost a wee bit extra, or it was a wee bit of penalty to pay off an existing loan. It was no big deal to me because I worked out the long-term game, and I thought, wow, this will blow this out the water. It was a done deal for me on a spreadsheet. So I then took that and consolidated it down. It then gave me money every single month, a lot more cash flow every single month to work with. Listen, cash is trash, cash flow is king. That's what it comes down to. Cash flow is king. Cash for cash sake is, you can rip it up and chuck it away. It is worthless. It's cash flow. It allows you, it's the lifeblood. It runs right through your body of your business, and it keeps everything going. So cash flow is the most important thing you could have in here. So cash flow for me was everything. So I consolidated everything down to that to make sure I had all the necessary cash every single month to do that, to feed the baby. The baby is the business. The baby is your buy-to-let business. You must never, ever starve the baby. And I still do that today.
Yeah, I know you do, yeah.
I take out half the salary you take out.
I know.
But the most important thing to me is wealth creation. My standard of living is down to a level where I could easily adapt and change to the current environment, depending on where it is. But I don't live frivolously, if that makes sense. And I don't, let's go and buy a Lamborghini Huracan and let's do this and let's mortgage that and let's borrow on that and let's have it. I'll never buy anything as a liability, and a car is a liability. Your own house is a liability. Unless it's an asset, it generates money. That's the only reason I'll buy it. Everything else has cost money to run, and I wouldn't do anything like that at all. So at that time, I had that same mentality. I'd built that in the beginning. So it was all that it did that for me in the beginning. So I did that. If I was doing it today, I'll be saying to people right now, and I can do this right now anyway because the numbers work for me, and I can invite people into a property fund, and I can give them a 5% guaranteed return on their money every single year, and I could pay that every single month for them if they wanted. So a yearly 5% guaranteed I could do right now. I could also give them a profit split of what I'm investing in. So a profit split of the income it generates, and also a profit split of the equity it generates as well. Why on earth would anybody want to go and invest in property on their own then?
I was going to bring that up as well. So we spoke about how
it's like I'll just invest in you then, Jim. Because it's like, if I've got an investment and my neck's on the line, because it's me, it's actually investing in all these things. It's me, it's actually giving the guarantees personally on all the financing to do with building my portfolio, the fund that I've got. Then why on earth would anybody think that might not succeed? Flipping heck. It's like, I've got everything on the line. You've got nothing except the money you've put in. That's why I only accept a certain type of person into actually invest with me. I'll not just let every man and their dog do that. There's strict criteria on that about who I would accept to invest in joint venture with. But if I was starting now, I would basically look at friends, family, and people like that, and say to them, look, I know it works. I'd be sitting down with them. I'd be going through the numbers like I go through them now. I'd be talking about what their return would be guaranteed every single year, but also they'd be getting a profit split as well, and then they would be getting a profit split of the increased equity over the 10 to 15 year period that we're investing in. Almost like it's kind of like a debenture. Debentures are loans to companies, and they give fixed rate returns. That's what a debenture is. But with debenture, you get your same amount back in 10 years' time without any increase. Whereas with property, if the property is going up in value, you're getting an increase in the split as well on top of your money back in 10 or 15 years' time. So that's what I would be offering if I was first starting out. But again, it's all the legal paperwork that goes with that and to work that out. Some people are happy to do that from friends and family if they're wanting to start out and just say, look, we'll invest in you because we know you're my son or my daughter or whoever. And we worked together before and I trust you. They've maybe got shares in the company as well with you. So that's another way to do it. So you're using somebody else's equity to leverage your position. But what you've got here is you've got two people with this synergistic effect. One has the money, clearly, and the other one doesn't. The other one has the skill and track record, and the other one doesn't. So you marry the two of them up, and the both of them win. That's the key here. Because in that situation where they're on their own, you probably find the one with the money has to learn a lot, and it'll take them a lot longer to get what they would get the one without the money as well, and the knowledge. So if you actually marry up together, the sum of the parts is a lot greater than the individuals. So that's what I'd be doing if I first started out, Richard.
I think that's probably a good way forward for a lot of people who are quite unsure about, well, how do I get started? I didn't have the money to get started. I didn't have the knowledge to get started. Band together, come forward.
Joint venture and get your names. Everybody put £5,000 in and then get 20 grand deposit out of 4 years, and the 4 years can go and buy a property together, and you just get started. But literally, people will spend £5,000 for a holiday. There you go. There's a quarter investment straight away for your first flat with 3 other people. So it's the things like the sacrifices for the holidays, the sacrifices for the nights out. I never went on nights out and stuff like that. It's like no chance. I was really proud of Ben the other day. We're coming back from the pictures yesterday, and I says to Ben, "You want to go to Burger King?" And he went, "Now, Ben's got a 5-figure sum in his account, and he's only in his 20s." I'm like, what? I can't believe it. And I must have taught him well. But he's even got a pension now, and it's almost reaching 6 figures. And he's only in his 20s. But I must have taught them well, because Ben says, "Why would I want to buy something at Burger King if I can get it for free in the house?"
I know, and I think, well, that's good at his age to have that attitude. I think even like my own personal experiences, like you talk about, nights out and holidays, and gradually as you get older, you realise the importance. And I mean, nights out are very few and far between. And
well, we talked about last week, didn't we? Yeah. We talked about last week, the week before, about the opportunity cost.
Yeah,
all these things. I mean, if you're in the opportunity cost one, we proved that the Huracan, buying a Lamborghini Huracan at 170 grand, would cost you 2 million over 40 years, because you've lost that opportunity to invest that in an investment that would actually make you that return. And that's 40 years. That's your retirement. So you spent 170 grand right now, okay? And that's the price you paid. That's the bill for regret. The 2 million you would have had when you retired 40 years later, all because you couldn't resist buying a Huracan just now, a Lamborghini. The winners will pay the price. The losers will get the bill for regret, I'll tell you. And that was something that was instilled with me in the beginning. It was instilled with me for the very, very beginning. It says, you know, I remember I'm sure it was Jerry Scriven or it was Bernard D'Souza. It says to me, Dave Butler. Dave's actually a friend of mine online. So is Jerry actually. But I remember they said to me, Jim, you know, it's like you'll either pay the price now or you'll pay the price later on. But at some point in your life, you will pay the price for what you've done or what you've not done. And it says, in these years to come, I know you liked, I liked golf at that time and all this. I was at golf, and he says, you know, like, could you imagine turning to your children in 20 years' time when your children grow up? Because I had very young children at the time. Tony was probably about 2 or 3. And your kids growing up and they've got to go to university or they've got to do something else. And in 20 years' time, and you've got them going to university, and they turn around and say, Dad, I really want to go to university. However, it's going to cost me about 10 grand a year. And I really can't afford, obviously, to do that. So can you help me out? Could you imagine not having the money to do that? Yeah. And that is what drove me more than anything. That thought in my mind, at the very fact that I could be in that situation and I had this opportunity right at this point in time of doing what I needed to do and anything I needed to do. You know, it was network marketing at that time, and then it evolved into my career, and then it evolved into property investment, and then it evolved into what we're doing now. So, but in these 20 years, just my daughter coming to me and saying, you know, and then me saying, well, I really can't afford it, but I tell you what, come and look at my trophies for my golf.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective, definitely.
Aye, it's like, really? But that's effectively, so it was pushed by my circumstances and pulled by my dreams at the same time. Right, let me talk about numbers, because this was important. I wrote this down, and I couldn't find my spreadsheet. So I'll do it again. So purchase for that was right. Say I've got my deposit and I've got my £5,000. So at that time it was 20 grand for a house, or 15. Okay. So it's 15 for a house, and we were earning 260. Now times that times 12, and it's probably 3-1. And I was about, I didn't get at that time. I think actually I had it down to, I think I had it down to I was making £1,000 a year out of each property. Okay, so that's profit. We could, I mean, this is for easiness. Okay, so in my first year I was making £1,000 a year. Okay. Now at that time, one of these was times point. I think it was 0.2. I think we were getting 8%. So I needed £3,000 a year to get my property. So that's after year one, I've made £1,000. But year two, I would have another £1,000, wouldn't I?
Yep.
Because and that would be effectively £2,000, wouldn't it? So year two, remember £3,000 in mind. Year three, then I had another £1,000, but I had the £1,000 from before, so I had another £2,000. And year four, it's like, wait a minute, I could buy another property. Okay, and then I'd be getting £2,000 a month, £2,000 a year. But I'd be getting 2,000. I'd be getting the money from the years before. That all makes sense. So I'm up at 3,000 in year three. Yeah. So I'm making £1,000 a year. Year three, I've got 3,000 now. Now I'm going to buy my next property because I've now got 4,000. So I'm buying my next property. Okay. So I've got 2 properties now, and I'm now making. I've invested that money in my next property, and I'm now making £2,000 a year because I've got 2 properties now. Yeah. And I'm now making £2,000 the next year, and it's like, wait a minute, I could buy another property. So I bought another one. But deposit down. Now I'm making £1,000 a year, but I've got 3, so I'm making £3,000 a year. And then thinking, wait a minute, I could buy another property. See how this is compounding, eh?
And see how, you're just going to see how your buying power increases.
4,000. Wait a minute, I could buy another property. There they go. And then they've got another one. We're making £5,000 a year because I've got 5 now. Okay. And then it's like, whoa, wait a minute, I could almost buy another property, but I tell you what, I'll wait till the next year, and then I'll get 6,000 next year, and then I could buy another 2 properties. See that? So I've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've now got £7,000 a year I'm making. Okay, and I've now got 7 properties. And it's like, wait a minute, I could buy another 2 properties. So I've now got £9,000 a year I'm making. Wait a minute, I could buy another 3 properties. So I've got 45. Now, give or take inflation. I mean, someday it's, hey, listen, there'll be a deadbeat out there somewhere. I'll go, that's no right because of these figures.
Yeah, this is just in simple terms to show you yeah.
Just go do one and stay broke for the rest of your life. That's what I'll tell you right now. Just live in your own world, jog on, don't even listen to what you're saying here, and it doesn't matter, don't listen to it. Just stay where you are right now. If you're broke, you'll stay broke for the rest of your life. So I can get another 3 properties. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've done 12 properties. I'm making £12,000 now a year. And wait a minute. Now, have you noticed something? I only started out with 3 grand.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 3 grand. I've got 12 properties now after 12 years, and I'm earning £12,000 a year net profit. Now, 4,000. I can get 4 properties now. So I'm now 60 grand. Now 4 properties for 60 grand. Now, I know inflation for the price of houses and all the rest of it, but this is in an idea where this just shows how it compounds up over the years. So now I've got 4 properties. I've now got 16 properties. So I'm now earning £16,000 a year. Oh, wait a minute. I could buy 5 more properties now. So I'm now 75,000. So 5 properties. I've now got 16. I've now got 21 properties. I'm now making 21,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I've got 3. I've got 7. I could buy 7 properties here. So I'm now 105,000, I think it is, for 7 properties with the mortgages. But remember, this is all taking the money out and leaving the mortgages in. So I've now got 7 on top of, how many did I have? 16 plus 7. Was that right? Yeah. No, 6. Oh, good. I've even lost my own. See, there they go. Look. See how this compounds? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. There's another 4. So there's 16. So there's 16, and there's another 5. So there's 21. And there's another 7. So there's 28 properties. 15 years out of 3 grand, I've now got 28 grand a year, and I've got 15 properties. 28 properties. See how that works?
Yeah, that's like you say. Obviously, there will be things that obviously have effects on different factors that affect that, but that's quite a simple demonstration showing how it compounds.
I could do this in a different way, Richard, and show you, because I did it in a different way. I did the profit in the beginning, and I showed the profit every year, and then I did the number of properties I could buy in this column here, right? But I just, this is off the top of my head how I did it. But I stuck this in my pocket at 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Think about where it would be.
Yeah.
I took that and put it in my pocket at 40 years extrapolated. And I had a wee bit of paper I walked about with 40 years. So when I got despondent here in the first 5 years, I'd only got 2 properties and I was greeting my eyes out. I looked at here and thought, holy shit, I've got 28 properties there at year 15. Year 5, I had 2 properties. Year 6, I had 3 properties. Year 7, I had 4 properties. Year 8, I had 5 properties. Year 9, I had 7 properties. I had 9 properties. I had 12 properties. I had 16 properties. I had 21 properties. I had 28 properties. Look at that, how that just meteoric rise there. But more importantly, I had £28,000 a year. And that, my friend, is how I retired from a standing start within 8 years of doing property investment. Because I pursued this, but even at 8 years, I had 27 properties.
Mm-hmm.
Because I scaled myself up and I made a lot of sacrifices in the beginning, and I kept reinvesting. I kept reinvesting on my salary, everything possible. Everything went to my property investment. My vehicle, it was going to set me free and give me my time back forever. I put a lot of time and effort in myself. Now, in the beginning, what I would do now is I'd get somebody else to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tried to have that broke mentality, and I was like, oh, I could save £50 a month and all the rest of it. But I only managed it myself because I couldn't get somebody like me who could manage it like me and be on top of it like me. But we have that system now because we developed this together.
Yeah, and back then there wouldn't be agents as such that would
and
do
they
such
didn't
a
have.
thing.
I mean, I tried to get 5 properties before the original owner of this, and he was like a wet fish. It's like flipping heck. I had to force him to come round to knock on a door with me to collect the rent, and he was meant to be managing it. And it's like, my God. And we had to sit in front of the tenant, and I had to say, right, well, what we're going to say. And he went, well, that so and so, so and so. And I had to force it out of him to get the rent. And I was paying him to do this. And I had to take him by the hand round to the property and say, where's the rent? That's the type of thing I had. And so I just got sick to death of that. So I actually managed them myself in the beginning. I tell you what, I paid a big price mentally for that. And I mean mentally, right? It really took its toll on my health mentally. But for me now, in hindsight, it was a price worth paying for me. And a lot of people wouldn't have lasted with that. And that's another story. And I tell you what, that's a frightening story. I didn't really want to talk about that in public. But and you'll know that anyway. But that's another story completely. But nowadays, I would actually get somebody else to manage it like you. And the reason for that is because you've been taught by me and you understand it completely. And you understand how important it is and the opportunity cost, the opportunity loss of not doing something or doing something. And you've got that mentality. Even though you don't have the big portfolio like me, you've always got me to rely on as well. In order to come back for the advice on what you should do next and how you should do things to get things done quicker and more improving, and what advice should be given to certain landlords as a result. So that's why I would get you to do it, and that's why I get you to do them today, for that very reason. Because I could make more money in my day-to-day job. I was working 168 hours a week. That's literally your whole life, was working at work. And I had to get out of work, and this was the only vehicle that could get me out. I had a choice to go into PLC and be a financial director of a PLC when it was floated the next year. That was Bell Security PLC, which exists today. I think it's been bought over by another companies. But I tell you what, I had that choice, and I said, no, I don't want to do that route because that's just my time again. I will never have any time to myself. I will work till I die, but I'd rather work till I die in something I love. And this is what it is.
I know, and speaking of time and things, there's so many decisions and things that get made with your portfolio and things that I do without even consulting you, because I know what they are, I know what you want to do, and I know how that should be done, and that saves and frees up so much of your time in order for you to keep building what you're doing.
Listen, Richard, if someone can't get excited about that right now and get started in property investment, you need to get a brain removal or something. It's like, to see that right in front of you, to see that grow right in front of you as well. The numbers might differ a wee bit, and it will be a different journey for you. But to watch that compounding effect, to watch into the 15th year, and realize in the first couple of years you've only got 2 properties. It's like, it's not going anywhere. Bullshit. That compounding wealth all the time. And I kept putting everything back in, feeding the baby, feeding the baby, feeding the baby, feeding the baby. And I still do that today. Feed the baby, because the baby will end up growing into a massive machine, which will generate income for you and your family and your generations to come, and generational wealth all the time. And it goes up in value while it pays you to wait. How crazy is that?
I know, and that's a really good way to put it.
Somebody had a go at me on TikTok and went, well, the stock market does that, but the stock market is completely volatile, and dividends are down to whether a company wants to pay them out or not. Buy to let, isn't it? Everybody needs a roof over their head, and if you do it properly, your occupancy rate will be up at 98%. And our occupancy rate is at 98%.
98%,
And effectively, you're generating money every single month. Oh my God, I could sit and do nothing and sit on a beach and drink pina coladas and make more money ever than I made in my job as a financial director. I left my work and I was making 6 times more income than I was as a financial controller when I left, actually, because I was moved to a different position because they couldn't find the right person for that. So they moved me there and got the other person in for the other job. That's a wee bit another skill that you do. But I literally left at that time and for that reason. Anyway, let's wrap up because we're at the hour.
But just to recap there, it is about making the sacrifice initially and being in it for the long term.
Okay, guys, see you next week. If you've got any questions,